representing the 64th District, Julie Alexander, and 65th District Rep, Sarah Lightner. Welcome. Welcome back.
Well, hello, Bart.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having us today.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, so both happy because you were part of the House that passed our insurance reform, and I think both of you, as you were campaigning, had this as one of your priorities.
Yeah, it's what we heard over and over at the doors and every office hour we have. It's what's important to the people back home. It will be fully implemented July of 2020, so we have to be a little patient here, but very pleased that our governor signed the bill as well.
So many questions, and I know you've been hearing them, and I think the number one question is, well, when do our insurance rates go down? And I guess, are they going down?
Well, Julie just mentioned that July of 2020 is when the plan starts phasing in, and there should be an immediate savings because of the audits that will happen. There's some additional reporting in car insurance organizations, I guess the catastrophic claims fund, and so they're only allowed to have a certain percentage of additional monies on top of the claims that they currently have. And so when this phases in right away, there's going to be an audit, and then any additional dollars will come back to the consumers.
Are we going to have to make some choices,
You
like
will.
how
Yeah.
much insurance we want?
And actually in our budget, we just talked about in our supplemental budget, we're going to allocate additional dollars so that the education process can take place. So people will know what options they have, what kind of health insurance they want attached to their automobile insurance plan or not. Some individuals will have option for exempting out completely.
Really?
Senior citizens specifically.
So like
Yeah,
the old,
Medicare eligible citizens don't have to have PIP coverage.
will it be similar to the old, remember the days of the PLPD where you could just have personal liability and the damages and no health with that?
It'll be similar.
That's an option. It's an option for seniors. And then with some insurance plans, health plans right now, car insurance, our car accident claims are covered. Like in particular, one of our plans is covered. So we don't have to have PIP coverage on our auto insurance because our health insurance plan allows for the hospitals to bill it just like a normal health issue.
It's still no fault, so if you were to be hit by an uninsured motorist, are you out of luck or are you going to be covered?
So it gets a little complicated there. So that's one of the reasons, Bart. You're asking some very important questions and people want answers. So I am in the process of coordinating a teletown hall because a lot of people are asking me those questions, and I want to make sure I have knowledgeable people in the room. And please follow my social media, Facebook page, website, state website, and when that date and time is announced, so people can actually call in and get answers to their questions. But there are a lot of pieces that need to be modified. The good news is this: we are already hearing about out-of-state insurance companies asking to come to Michigan. More competitive policies, more competitive and options for consumers will ultimately bring the rate down, as well as allowing individuals to choose the health coverage attached to their car coverage, if they so choose to have that, what option fits their budget.
Yeah, and I didn't realize we see a lot of the ads for, I think, Geico. You
And
can't
they're
even
not
get
even in
Geico
Michigan.
insurance.
Correct.
Yeah. So, are you both confident that we're going to, because so many you had so many factions to please: the healthcare industry, the insurance industry, the trial attorneys. Really, a lot of people had some sort of vested interest.
I'm not sure the trial attorneys are still happy at all, but I will tell you in regard to healthcare that the 2-week time period where our leadership, where Senator Shirkey and Speaker Chatfield were having conversations with the governor, those were the conversations taking place in finding a balance, finding somewhat of a compromise that offered a fee structure that was fair and reasonable to the hospitals, but yet also to bring that rate reduction.
Sure.
All right.
Well, and you have to remember, in the whole grand scheme of insurance and the catastrophic claims fund, only 0.1% of claims actually go through that fund. So, taking that PIP coverage out, to me, isn't super catastrophic for insurance because they only pay a very small portion of our population.
All right, so by July of 2020, we'll have this new.
It will be up and running.
Sure.
All right. But in the meantime, your job's not done because the biggest thing hanging over your heads is the state budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I sit on appropriations, like Julie just mentioned, and we have been diligently working through all the different subcommittees. You know, I'm on 4 of them, and looking at historical spending, lapse funds, programming, because it's not just looking at the dollars. It's looking at, yes, the dollars, but are we spending them wisely, and are these programs that they're utilizing these dollars working? And how big of a population are they working for? And you know, so we've made some changes. Probably the biggest thing that we've addressed statewide is a 3% administrative cut and a 25% IT cut. And that comes from, you know, just trying to rein in some of these IT costs, because a lot of times what happens is we'll start another program, or they'll get a new program, and so they have to spend additional dollars there. Well, they're not necessarily utilizing what they already have, and then trying to get some of the current programs communicating with each other. So we're actually just forcing efficiencies, because you know, it's a sad day when you run into IT people and they're always excited because they're like, it's Christmas every day, and that is not appropriate with taxpayer dollars.
They're always getting.
I mean, I heard that in the elevator. Yeah, and I heard that in the elevator, and I'm like, do you realize who you're talking to? I sit on general government, you know, and so, you know, that also made it, for me, not a terrible thing. And, you know, sometimes you'll hear opponents of it say, well, you know, you're putting us at risk, and, you know, we have the cybersecurity issues and all that. And I really don't think that's true. I think that will always be a priority. We are going to keep our people safe and our information safe. That's a priority of IT. That's their job, you know, number one. And so we're just forcing efficiencies on it, and there's going to be a task force that's going to start to, you know, help rein in additional costs and efficiencies within our government. Because, you know, Julie and I were just talking about DHHS. You know, there's so many different programs that DHHS runs, and one of the issues we have is when we're trying to collect data and go through data on programming and dollars, these programs don't talk to each other. And so there's going to be some efficiencies there, I'm sure, because there's tons of smart people out there that can make programs talk to each other, so you can collect the data and be able to go through it and process it.
And as Sarah just mentioned, when it comes to the lapsed funds, so if we're allocating X amount of dollars to a department, but they're not using those dollars, what can we do to rein that back? So get better control of that, number one. And number two, we demanded in our budget process, we looked at a 3% reduction of administrative costs from each department. So forcing everyone to live within their means like families do, especially before we even consider to look at what options might be available for road funding. We need to look at existing dollars.
Yeah, so is roads going to be addressed in the new budget?
Yeah, and actually, transportation budget just came out last week, a proposed transportation budget in the subcommittee. And, you know, Representative Maddox done a great job with his committee and going through all the line items, seeing what assets we own, where dollars are being spent, what type of technology is being used. You know, he's collaborating with the policy chair, which is Representative O'Malley. And, you know, in our caucus, it's a priority to make it that 45 cents not happen. Right. And so in going through the transportation budget, I mean, just in existing revenue right now, they found almost $500 million in, you know, in funding to just move around. That's not being used efficiently or effectively. Right. And so they're committed, and our whole caucus is committed to, you know, road and infrastructure funding.
Yeah, I think Sarah will agree. We're not afraid to ask those tough questions. Is it in the state's best interest to own a bridge, to own how many airports, how many airplanes? I mean, we need to continue to, yeah, I know. But we have to be willing to ask those questions.
Are we going to sell the Blue Water Bridge?
I don't know. So at this point, and there's a lot of controversy over that because, you know, it came out in the news, we want to sell the bridge. That's not what's happening at this point. What's happening is they're just exploring the options of seeing whether or not there's even any interest in selling off some of our state assets that we don't necessarily need to.
Is it the
own.
government's role
Right.
to be running something, a business that a private entity could?
Right.
Like rest areas, like in, you know, on the turnpike, they're privately operated.
Right.
They, you know, have
Right.
restaurants and.
Again, we can't be afraid to ask those questions and jump in and gather accurate information so that we're informed and we're not afraid of those conversations.
So you don't think we're going to get a big 45-cent gas tax?
No.
I wouldn't be
No.
supportive, and I don't think our caucus would. So, but we need to acknowledge what local townships and cities are doing. So when we have that road funding conversation, I'm always the first one to say, look, I've got several townships in our Jackson County area. They're already stepping up, and they're
both
paying
do.
for their
Millages.
local roads. That's right, through those millages. So when we look at that, we need to be cognizant of those additional dollars they're already paying out of their pocket. So when we look at a state program, whatever that might look like for a new road funding project, aligning the dollars that are being collected right now to go towards the roads, ensuring all of those dollars are going there, and do some arranging so that all entities are still funded, including our schools. We are not looking at reducing our school funding. In fact, our proposed budget raises it with the inflation rate again. So we understand the importance of taking care of that, but aligning the funding mechanism to the outcome.
Yeah, and the governor dropped a bomb in Mackinac Island, said our education system is dead last in the country.
Well, I don't think that was a bomb. I mean, that's something that's been talked about for years and years. And Julie sat on education policy before, and I do not sit on the education appropriations, but, you know, our caucus is committed to not going backwards on educational funding. And, you know, with that, we were talking about the roads and allocating different dollars. And one of the things we heard from a lot of our people is the tax that they pay at the gas pump, they want to go to the roads. And so, you know, that's an option we're exploring as well. But you also, at the same time, have to figure out where that funding mechanism comes from for the schools, because it funds different things, but the majority is school and roads. And so we're looking at all those options and seeing what we can do to give more dollars, I guess, to education and transportation, both.
All right, to be continued. A lot of work still to be done. You both head up tomorrow
Yeah.
to resume work.
Yeah.
And you've got a town hall, or what is
That's
it?
it. Yeah, that's in the process of, we're putting the final details to that, but again, to cover the topic of car insurance reform, what that's going to look like for 2020. And Sarah, your event is when?
Yeah, I have an event on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. at the Blackman Township Hall for a transportation town hall. So I'm going to have the chair of transportation down here in Jackson to discuss road funding, technologies, whatever. It's a public town hall from 6 to 7.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate all the updates. Thanks for coming in today.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
All right, now get back to Lansing.
Yeah.
64th District State Representative Julie Alexander and 65th District State Representative Sarah Lightner. A lot more